Hey everybody, it's me, Jackie, again, and I'm here with Debbie. Debbie is an alpha sister of mine and also a support group leader. Um, and I'm just going to let Debbie take over and introduce herself and just share her Alpha One story. And I just might interrupt you a few times, Debbie, and ask a few questions. Otherwise, I might just wait till you're all done and ask some then. So go ahead.
Okay, I'm Debbie Webb Howells. I live in Virginia. We are also known as the pollen capital of the world, it seems like. So my voice is a little scraggly today. There's a lot of pollen. The count is super, super high. And I know this because I was recently in Florida. I didn't have any issues. As soon as we got back in Virginia, I could feel my throat closing. So I know this is really the pollen capital of the world.
Yeah.
I'm an SZ alpha. My story is probably similar to everybody else's. A lot of people. I lived in a home where my parents smoked. My father was also, he worked in the shipyards here in Virginia. He used to line the hulls of the ships with asbestos. I also married a man who worked in the asbestos industry. So
Oh,
as I grew up, with chronic illnesses, chronic colds, chronic coughs. They attributed it to asthma. And then, of course, as I got older, I ended with bronchitis like every other month. I had bronchitis. And I attributed it to one, I was also a smoker. Be the first to say, yes, I smoked. I smoked for 30 years, sadly. But I said, I'm in a smoking home. I smoke. My husband, my father, they all bring asbestos home. I did the laundry. So I know I was getting all that in my lungs. So I figured that's just that. They diagnosed me early on with emphysema. And again, I attributed it to my dad and my husband. So finally, in Doc in the Box, which is where I would constantly go to just get treated for the bronchitis, said, you come in here every other month. You really need to see a pulmonologist. So I did. I went and saw one. I couldn't get an appointment with who they told me to, but I got an appointment with a new doctor at their office. And so he, checked me over, did all the tests, listened to my breathing, and he says, I'm going to test you for this thing. It's really rare, and we most people don't have it, but I'm just going to test you because it's something I've heard about. So, of course, he did a little broad draw, and, I didn't think anything about it. So the following week, he calls me, and I could kind of hear this little excitement in his voice, and I'm thinking, okay, what's this all about? And he says, you know what? You have this thing called alpha 1 antitrypsin deficiency. He said, I studied about it in school just a little bit, but most people don't ever have this because it's so rare. I mean, and he was just excited. When I say excited, it was like he was excited
thank
because
you.
you're my first. It is like you were my first alpha. I'm so excited. I said, okay. That's what he said. He said, your genotype is an SZ. He says, and your serum levels are at 11. And he says, that's really low from what I can read on these charts. And he said, you really should start this. They have this thing called an augmentation therapy. It's like an infusion you get every week. And you really need to start on that. And I said, every week? He goes, yeah, every week. It's like, you know, I'm 40. I don't think I was like 42, something like that. It's like I'm too young to commit myself to this thing every week. Busy life was just in the way. And it was like, he says, well, that's your decision. He said, but you do have sleep apnea too. So I'm going to treat you for that. So I continued to see him every 6 months for the sleep apnea. He put me on a CPAP. I was feeling good. I've had it every now and then. I'd have bronchitis, not like I had had it, but he would treat me for that with just, steroids, antibiotics. So finally, I'm still working. I mean, I worked full time. I had to go out of town for a meeting, and it was like 3 hours away, and it was in Roanoke, Virginia, which the elevation where I live is like sea level. I mean, I'm like flatlander.
Mhm.
So Roanoke is up in the mountains. So it was, maybe about 100 feet above sea level. I get out there, and I could feel as we're going out there, I could feel myself not feeling well. We get out there, and that first day there, it's like I couldn't breathe. I mean, just literally couldn't breathe.
Wow.
By the end of that night, I was gasping for air and just and my whole office was there, and they were all really concerned. And it was like, they were walking to go to dinner. It's like, guys, there's no way I can walk. I can barely walk from my room to the bathroom. So it's like, I just can't do this.
Wow.
So, I mean, they brought me back some soup. I said, just bring me some hot and sour soup. That had always done it in the past. Well, I had that. That didn't help. So the next morning, I made it downstairs to where we had, buffet breakfast set up. And I went to my boss and I said, you need to take me to a doc in the box. And he goes, what
Wow.
for? And I said, I need something. I know what I need. Just take me. So he did. He took me and he was really concerned and got me there. And they, of course, wanted to run all these tests and do all. I said, look, I know what I have. I said, just give me some prednisone, give me an antibiotic, and give
Mm-hmm.
me a breathing treatment and let me leave. And they really didn't want to do that. But I said, no, that's all I'm agreeing to. So they did.
Yeah.
So we still had 2 more days we had to stay. I had to stay at the conference. So I just stayed in the bed for 2 days. I never made it to the conference. Somebody would bring me something
Wow.
to eat. And I had to drove home, like white knuckling the steering wheel because I was just so ill, but got home. And I called my doctor. And I said, this thing you keep telling me I need to do this infusion thing. I said, I think it's time. So that was like 2014. So I did like 7 years without doing this infusion. And so he started me on
Yeah.
that in June of 2014. So I'm coming up on what, 11 years? Yeah, 11 years.
Yeah.
In that time, Jackie, I've probably had maybe bronchitis once, maybe twice.
Nice.
And I've had the flu once. I get the flu shot every year. I've had the pneumonia shot. I've had all the COVID shots. I even got the RSV vaccine this year. I went to London in 2022, I think it was. I think it was 2022. I went to London to see my grandson for Christmas. And I got the flu when I was in London. And fortunately, he's in the military. Yeah. I was really sick. It took a lot for me to tell him I
All
need to
right.
go see,
All right.
so I was concerned. I'm in a foreign country. I didn't know how that was going to work, but he said, we can take you to the base.
Right.
I mean, I can take you to the military base. So he took me there. And of course, they had
Good.
never heard of Alpha. They didn't know anything about it. But I told them what I said, give me a breathing treatment.
Right.
Give me some steroids, give me some codeine, something for my. So they did all that. That was probably the worst I've been, and I was scared because, like I said, in a foreign
I bet.
country, not knowing. I know I
Yeah.
had a 10-hour flight back home, and you know yourself when
Gosh.
you're flying, you're anyway. So here I had my
Yeah.
portable oxygen, knowing. I mean, I had a couple of batteries, but it was like still just knowing. So my daughter was with me, and I don't know how we got home. I was to the point I was ready to call Skip Schreiber and say, "Hey, what will it take for you to book me a private flight? I mean, I'm willing to pay for it. I mean, that would have been astronomical, I'm sure, but
Right.
I was so afraid.
Right. No.
I'm so afraid of a commercial.
Right.
So it's like, what can you do on a
Yeah.
mid flight? Get me home on a mid. No, I mean, it was just. But anyway, I got home,
Wow.
and it took me about 6 months to get over that flu. But the doctors at the base hospital did say, if you'd have never had the flu shot, we're not sure you'd have survived this because it was so bad. I mean,
Wow.
I had such a bad case of the flu.
Yeah.
So it's like, yep,
Yeah.
I played flu shots. A lot of people don't like shots. That's kind of it. And I did, I guess once I started on the therapy in 2014, my nurse was the one that told me about support groups. And Charlotte Madison was the local support group leader here. You remember Charlotte?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she got me involved in it. We started going to conferences together. And then when she kind of got to the point where she felt like she needed to step down, she asked me if I would take over her group, which I did. And so we had also started another group in Norfolk. So we had two support groups that we were running in the state.
Nice.
And so yeah, I mean, we still got them going, but that's kind of it. And then
Yeah.
last year, we got my sister involved last year. So she's now taken over the Norfolk
Family
group, helping
affair.
me out with the.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Family
So
disease,
that's kind of
family affair. Yeah. Yeah.
it is.
I
It
was
is. I
thinking
mean,
about you. I'm so surprised. Yeah. I'm so surprised that actually that first doctor, knew to test you for alpha 1. That's surprising. I mean, even though, like, you said you knew you were a smoker and knew probably attributed a lot to that, but that's good to hear that at least that first doctor, that you've seen, knew to test you for alpha one. Maybe didn't know enough about it, but at least knew enough to test you for it. So that's good.
And I think it's because he was
What
newly
else?
out of med school.
Oh, yeah.
But he is still my doctor. We've learned together. I
Well,
mean,
that's wonderful.
he does, yeah, he
That's
does a
good.
lot more now
That's
with the
good.
sleep study clinic.
The doctor, yeah. The doctor I go to now, he's like my third or fourth doctor. And I either had to switch because of insurance before, but this last time I switched because I felt like my doctor wasn't listening to me. So this doctor though, he's fairly, I mean, he's fairly young. I'd say he's maybe in his 30s, but he is so good about, he tells me, he's like, you probably know more about Alpha One than I do. And he said, you just tell me what you need, and I will give you what you need. And we'll learn this together. And he's so good about listening to my needs. It's good to have a good doctor that will listen to you and listen to your needs and not take you as like, oh
And
no, you
that's
can't
how,
tell me what to do.
right, that's how my doctor is. It's like I actually see the PA more than I see the doctor, but the PA used to run a lung clinic, and I forgot what, I think it was like up in John Hopkins or something. He was in charge of like one of the lung units in the hospital. So he's well versed in lung issues. But he's like that with me. It's like I'll call him on the phone and I'll say, like when we last year when I went to conference, it's like I'm getting ready to go to a conference in Miami. I don't have any antibiotics and I don't have any prednisone. Can you call me in a prescription? And he'll call me in a prescription. He says, you know when to do it, you know when not to. And so he's really good about, doing that. I just call him and say, hey, I need this. And he's like, okay, I don't need to see you. You know, like you said, like you're a doctor, you know enough about what's going
I
on,
love that.
whether to take it or not. Yeah, exactly. I said,
I
now,
love that. Yeah.
I know the sad thing about this disease is it's so different for everybody. I mean, look at my sister Joni. She is the same genotype as me. She's an SZ. We grew up in the same household, but she's totally asymptomatic. But she didn't
Right.
smoke.
Yeah.
She wasn't, while she was around the asbestos as a child, she was not, she didn't marry her, her husband had nothing to do. Hi, honey, come on through. That's my husband.
Hello. Hi, Abby.
Her husband was never in any type, I mean, he did work in the oil fields out in Wyoming, but, she said, I think that was a little different than with the asbestos, getting the fibers and stuff in your lungs and those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
she helps out a lot too. And neither one of my parents were ever tested. So the only way I have figured out what what my parents were, mainly because I have another sister who is an MM, and she's been tested. She got tested
So,
3 times because she just knew she had this. Well, if you and Jody got this, I got.
right.
And
Right.
she tested 3 times, and Dr. Brantley actually read one of her tests, so I know that test, there'd be on a shadow of a doubt the test was right. So with her
Yeah.
being an MM and I'm an SZ, I know one parent was an MS and one parent was an MZ. I mean, that's the only thing, only logical explanation. Which is which, I don't
Right.
know. I would say my dad was probably an MZ. My dad died when he was like 62.
Oh,
I mean, I'm sure it was something from Alpha One, but because he smoked and he worked in the asbestos industry just like me, I attributed everything to
right.
that. But again, that was just that those are just things that complicated the disease, without um, being exposed to that type of stuff. I still would have been an SZ. There's still no way I would not have been. I may not have been quite as
Right.
symptomatic, but I don't know. You just don't know.
Right.
I know people who aren't in, they're not in smoking households, and yet they have, their
Right.
symptoms. They like
Right.
me. I use oxygen. I see you have your oxygen on. Do you have your oxygen on? I can't tell.
Yes.
Yeah, you have your oxygen
Yeah.
on.
Yep.
I'm gonna
Yep.
say when I'm around the house, a lot of times I don't need it, but if I'm out and about, I put that backpack on and I go and just like you, I don't let it stop me.
Right. If we let it
That's
stop
kind
us,
of it.
we wouldn't still keep going. What, I
Yeah,
know
I'm
there's a
not going to be a
lag, I think, in
homebody just
us,
because
but
I have
what,
alpha.
yeah. What great advice do you think you have for someone that is just being diagnosed with alpha 1?
I think the best advice is don't let this disrupt your life. If you're listen to your doctor and if he recommends augmentation therapy, I would say start it sooner than later. If I mean the augmentation therapy, of course, isn't going to cure it, but we know there's a cure out there, but it's just not been brought to where, and it probably will never cure me because I've got enough damage done, but it just is slow and it'll slow the progression, if anything. I mean, I wish I'd have started this 7 years sooner than I
Mm-hmm.
did. I might not, I mean, I might, the progression would have been less. So that's 7 years I went totally exposing my lungs to things that I probably should not have, and I might have been in a little better shape. The other thing I would recommend people to do is exercise. Don't, it's a catch to like, I can't exercise because I'm short of breath. Well, I'm short of breath because I'm not strengthening my lungs. So it's like get out there and exercise. Don't sit around and feel sorry for yourself.
All right.
I know you've heard this. I say this all the time. I may have alpha 1, but alpha 1 doesn't have me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I feel
And
like if
that's
we
it.
don't, I even did this myself. I feel like I said, I can't even right, walk for a minute. How they expect me to exercise or whatever. Well, just do whatever you can. If it's 30 seconds at a time, a minute at a time until you build that up, keep going. I wish I would have listened to that advice a lot sooner than what I did. I just kept thinking, well, I can't exercise. I don't know what they mean by exercise and I can't, and I wish I would have listened to them a lot sooner
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, I do pulmonary rehab twice a week. I've been doing that over 2 years. And of course, it's in a medically controlled environment, but it's a workout. It's a good hour workout twice a week. And I'm on oxygen. There's somebody there monitoring me. So I know, I mean, and I really think that helps. When we go on vacation and I don't exercise, even though we might be out walking around doing, things just like you walk, you stop, you walk, you stop. It's not the same as that
Right.
full hour of continuous exercise. And I really feel it when we get home. It's like I'm so out of breath. And that's
Yeah.
because I've sat around and let my lungs kind of rest and not, they're not getting the exercise that they need as well. So I think that's the best thing is just keep it yours, keep it that same pace. Don't suddenly feel like, oh my God, I have this disease. What am I gonna do? It's like continue living your life and just go for it. Go for it.
I agree. I agree. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. It's been so fun talking to you and getting to hear your story more. I know I've heard it before, but
Yeah.
I want other people to hear it and get to know you. And I'm hoping we'll get more awareness out there by doing these videos. So I thank you and I appreciate
Oh,
you.
I agree. Sure, sure. And
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in a month? We got about a month.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. A little
I'm
over a month.
excited for
Yeah. Can't wait for Miami. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's one thing that the Alpha One Foundation does is a national conference every year. So we look forward to that every year. All right.
exactly.
I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll be on.
Okay.